always draw lots of parallels between sports betting and stock investing, because to me, it's hold your nose at the time when you're like, when you just can't do it and you're just like, it feels better to go the other way. You have to go with a way that hurts you, and you typically will win. Now, you will take a year off your life by doing that. But at the end of the day, you're on the right side by doing something that's against the public.
Welcome to the Futures Edge podcast. I'm Jim Uriel. As always, executive producer, brains behind the operation, Bob Iacchino, and in the background, Haley, producer. Today we have Uncle Phil of, what's the name of your website, Phil?
UnclePhil'sLocks.com. Thank you. And that's all my media as well. Twitter, YouTube channel, Instagram, TikTok, and I even started a Threads account that I'm not really too tied to right now.
Threads is there's that Facebook initiative that's supposed to be against those evil conservatives, right?
Correct.
Yeah, the Elon Musk killer.
Right. Yeah.
I'm trying to appeal to all people.
But did you see they were actually, now they're investigating Elon Musk for SpaceX not discriminating against illegal immigrants and asylum seekers in hiring? Did you guys see that?
Yeah, and the lawsuit itself, Philly, if you haven't seen it, they're asking him for back pay of the people he would not hire. So literally, like, no, I wish I would have interviewed.
There's actually DOJ laws that say you can't hire non-American citizens for many, many jobs in making rockets and things like that with government. When my daughter was in engineering in Illinois, they went to the Boeing plant, I think it was in St. Louis, and they were about to go in and tour the plant, and all the non-U.S. citizens who were in part of her group, Illinois engineers, were told to leave. They could not come in. So the notion that he's being charged with this is just absurd. I know we're off track already, which, by the way, us being off track on this podcast, I don't know, that seems kind of normal, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is.
I wouldn't have it any other way.
Thank you. Okay, but now I got to get back to the football. This is exciting for me because there's a couple bets I made. And so I'm going to take the first question, Bobby, then it's you.
Yeah.
A couple weeks ago, I got the Bears 7.5 wins. I know I'm a homer. I understand completely that there's no science based on this. I think Justin Fields is better than people thought. I thought last year they had a good team until they dismantled the defense. Is my bet crazy or no?
I think so.
Fair enough.
Well, I'll just say it from this perspective. Historically, it's tough to go from a 3-win team to over 7.5 to 8. You're talking about a 5 difference. And
it's been done though, right?
It absolutely has been done. It's just tough to imagine given the Bears situation. The Bears, were hamstrung last year with the dead cap money. I mean, it was $93 million of dead cap money that they were just hamstrung with. They just couldn't sign anybody else. This year, they actually have $33 million in cap money that they have not spent. And it's the most in the NFL right now. And so you're like, what are you doing? What's the plan? Because this has to be the year for Justin Fields. You're on the 3rd year of his rookie deal, and you have 4 years, but you have till the end of this season, the spring of 2024, to pick up his 5th-year option. So you have to make decisions on, is he the guy or is he not the guy? And so you have to support him. And so far, I'm just not seeing it.
Okay, so last year, they were 3-4. They had just pounded the Patriots on Monday Night Football.
Right.
I don't know if you remember. Like, they rolled them. They were 3-4. The very next day, they started dismantling the defense. Like, oh, shit, we don't want to be pretty good. I just don't understand that. I understand it's a business, but can you shed some light on that?
I can't. I cannot shed any light on what the Bears are doing. It's very interesting. I mean, because it's almost like you're tanking to get up into a top pick so that you could potentially draft another quarterback. And that's exactly what they did. They didn't tank, but they kind of did because they reeled off 10 straight losses to what you said. And they had that primo position in the draft, and they traded it away. And so, again, it's like, you have to ask the questions, what are the Bears doing?
I agree completely.
So here's where I wanted to go with this. And again, this is our annual pre-NFL launch of the season sports show with Uncle Phil from Uncle Phil's Locks. And I wanted to bring that up again because college football's already started. But I want to have one question about the Bears and then jump to college so I can get this hat off. Because a hat just give me a headache, and my wife says my head looks weird.
Well, it's not going to mess up your hair.
Yeah, it's just not
you
enough
get that
to mess
joke
up
right?
anymore.
You don't have enough hair to mess up.
It's a good-looking hat, Bob.
Good-looking hat, right? This comes straight from a store that sells Bears stuff too. Like it's authentic. When you look at last year, so I looked at that same bet Jimmy did. The over/under is still 7.5 for the Bears, and it's interesting because the NFC North, Detroit is 9.5, the Vikings are 8.5, the Green Bay 7.5, Bears are 7.5, right? So it tells you that basically this division, at least Las Vegas thinks this division is just throw your hands in the air. They're separated by a game.
Yep.
For the most part, right? So I looked at that same bet and I said, I follow the Bears extremely closely, and I'm like, okay, I understand what they did. I think they think Justin Fields showed enough to deserve that one more year. Yep. And if they didn't get him some weapons and some blocking, by the way, they didn't get him some weapons and some blocking, they would never know if he was Lamar Jackson or RG3. From that perspective, I look at it and I say, 7.5. So why are they at 7.5? Because injuries. I think they could win 9 games when I look at the schedule if nobody gets injured. And we already have probably their best interior offensive lineman, Tevin Jenkins, missing the beginning of the year. So I said, I'm not going to take this bet because one of the things that I've always done in the handful of sports bets that I make, they're always football. Occasional baseball or basketball, but not much. If I'm positive about something, like I'm positive about a bet, and I think Vegas is nuts, I'm wrong. It literally is about an 85% probable system, Jimmy. Like I'm like, they're crazy. Bears are easily going to win 11. That means they're going to win like 5, But only if I have passion on my opinion.
You guys remember there's one more game too, right? And Aaron Rodgers is gone. So Phil?
Yeah, go ahead.
I totally agree. And that's the frustration with me with the Bears is that look, I don't have a dog in the fight as a professional sports gambler. I have to take my allegiances away because emotions keep you from placing the bets that you'd want to place. And so I step back. But I tell you what, the Bears are one of the most frustrating franchises because I'm like, you have to go all in. Aaron Rodgers is gone. This is your opportunity. I mean, if you just go and invest all in on Justin Fields, this is your year to get to the playoffs potentially because it's wide open. The NFC in particular is completely wide open. It's all about rosters this year, as I'm sure we'll get into, but that's the opportunity. So you've got to be grabbing this. So again, I still believe in Eberflus and the staff. And I think Ryan Poole's doing a great job. But I still wonder about what's happening, why they're not spending this money, and why are they not getting some more help for Justin Fields? Because this is the year.
Yeah, so I actually have an opinion on that, and I don't know if I'm right or not, but I think Poles, is playing a long game while Fields is in a short window. In other words, Poles said, okay, let's get him a receiver. Let's get him an offensive lineman. Let's make sure the running backs are sound. Let's make sure we got our tight end secured. And then if he doesn't make a leap to where we can decide it's him, we can dump him and we still got money left. We draft May. We draft Caleb Williams. I mean, if Justin Fields doesn't make a leap, they're going to have a high draft pick again, and they might have some maneuverability. That's what I think they're doing. I don't think they're trying to make the playoffs this year necessarily or trying to get to the Super Bowl. I think they're trying to set it up to be able to decide on Fields, Jimmy.
But you guys saw that backup quarterback who played these first couple games, right? I think his name is Tyson Bagent. That guy had feet. He was quick. He was all over. Am I crazy? I mean, I know he's playing against scrubs, but I mean, I assume there's some upside with him too.
Well, here's the thing. I definitely want to get to betting, okay? Because that's what Phil is. The reasons are gone. But Justin Fields is not the guy if Tyson Bagent makes you have a quarterback controversy.
It's so true. And in preseason in particular, you, again, believe nothing what you see and half of what you hear.
All right, I'm going to take his hat off because it's giving me a headache anyway. Let me fluff up all the hair I have left.
There you go.
So, college already started, right?
Yeah.
So I want to go to the Big Ten because it's near and dear to my heart and Jim's as well. So I went to Fan Nation in anticipation of this podcast. I have a niece at Purdue. She also happens to be my godfather. So in the Italian hierarchy, she's supposed to be my favorite. And then I have another niece who is at Illinois. Jimmy went to Illinois.
Yeah.
So I went and I looked at Big Ten. And when you're looking at the Big Ten, you go, okay, who are the next best teams after Ohio and Michigan, right? You just don't even worry about necessarily the rest. Fan Nation had Illinois ranked much, much higher than Purdue. Do you agree with that? And if so, who do you think's got a better shot in the first Big Ten weekend of football in their games?
It's definitely a league where it's top heavy. I mean, that's the case, right? It's Michigan and Ohio State. I think the Big Ten is super interesting. Purdue is interesting in the fact that they stole Jimmy's defensive coordinator, who had the number one defense in the entire scoring defense in the entire nation, and Ryan Waters there at Purdue. So it's really interesting to see if he's going to be able to, how long it will take him to build that up. I think it might take a little bit. I think that from Bielema, he's still got Barry Lunny Jr. as a play caller. He lost a quarterback, lost a defensive coordinator.
And three drafted defensive.
Oh, yeah. Witherspoon's a big loss, right? Your cornerback. So I'll give a slight edge to Illinois in this one. I think that Bielema's experience, I think he's building a foundation, and this looks like what Wisconsin used to look like. I think, it does look like the old Wisconsin teams. And I think Bielema has an identity. Ryan Waters, what will be his identity as a coach? Bielema's very experienced. I'm clearly going to go with Illinois this year. Although, as we get into bets, I will take Toledo plus 10 against Illinois. I still like Illinois to win the game, but it's the great situation, right? You can be an Illinois fan and root for the Fighting Bielemas, and you can still take the 10 points, and you're like, hey, it's a hedge, right? It's a hedge. You're like, hey, if they were to somehow get upset, you're the smart guy in the room who bet on that. It's the emotional hedge. And then, but if they win and don't cover, then it's doubly great. So it's like playing a middle in essence.
Toledo has a cool name too, right?
They do.
What's their name?
They're the Rockets.
The Rockets.
Is that a Saturday game, guys?
It is.
Okay, so I want to point out to people, we're recording on Tuesday the 29th, but you're going to be watching this sometime Friday. And I can't commit that I'll be able to get it out in time for people to watch this to bet the late Friday games. So let's stick with like Saturday college games and what you like. So you like Toledo in the plus 10.
I do. I'll stay early. Think Hugh Freeze will turn Auburn around this year. And I like them to cover the 35.5 against UMass this weekend. I think that the first weekend in general is a good weekend to take the SEC, because last year the SEC, out of the 14 teams, week one, 13 out of the 14 covered. So I think you're pretty safe in taking SEC teams this year in that. I think there's also opportunities this year to take the under in points, because quietly the NCAA made a rule change this year where before in college football, the clock stopped after each first down. The clock no longer stops, even when the players go out of bounds, except the final 2 minutes of each half. And so that is shortening the game, and it will take people a while to catch up. And if they don't watch this podcast or don't listen to this podcast, they'll miss it, because very few people watched football last week, and there was only 10 games on. But guess what? 7 out of the 10 games went under the total.
So you think the clock was part of that reason? Or all of the reason? Yeah.
I think it's certainly there. And I think it's a factor this year, and it'll take the public to catch up. Because again, the public bets favorites, and they bet overs. This is an opportunity for the futures edge people to take advantage of that.
But everybody watches the futures edge anyway, so everybody's going to.
Well, I'm sure they will, right? This will move the number.
Right. But if an hour ago you would have said to me, take this bet you $50, you tell me, does UMass have a football team or not? I may have lost that bet.
UMass does. UMass does.
Yeah.
UMass actually beat, it was New Mexico State this past weekend, were a 7.5 point dog. UMass actually returned 17 starters from last year. So really interesting. They haven't been a great team. They're a sneaky underdog pick, but I think going on the road against Auburn will be a little bit too much on the Plains this weekend.
So how do you have, I mean, it's really early for this, but how do you have the BCS shaping up toward the end of the year? I mean, is it just too early? And I don't mean from a betting perspective.
Yeah.
Take your betting half off and just your analysis. I know you look at trends. So are you seeing any trends in what's going to happen with the BCS?
Well, it is trends right now. We are navigating using the stars under cloudy skies.
Oh, Jesus.
Look at you go.
A Jerome Powell reference.
I had to pull out a Jackson Hole reference for you guys.
Well played.
Right?
Yeah.
I've been sitting on that one for a week.
Spectacular.
I remember listening to him say it going, what did you hire for? How many PhDs do they have? Like 4,000 PhDs that work for the Fed, and your navigators under cloudy skies, like you're telling us you don't have any clue what's going on. Anyway, please go on.
Yeah, it really is. But right now, I think that's very apropos for what we're doing right now in the preseason, because until you see teams play, it's hard to get a trend. So the very first weekend, that's what I look at. I look at things that are going to move the needle, things I can count on. Like very first week, I can count on the SEC teams to cover. They're jacked up and they're ready to cover, and they're ready to play. I also look at this clock differential as something to look at as well that we already spoke about. As far as this year, I think it's one of the most interesting seasons that we've had in a long time, because there's no clear-cut favorite. You know, Georgia's still going to have a great defense, but they lost Stetson Bennett, the head of their quarterback. I mean, Alabama still hasn't settled on a quarterback. Michigan, everybody's picking Michigan. They have a quarterback, and they have a great running game, but not as much of a passing game. And they're going to run again through the Big Ten in a lot of ways, because they have that dominant offensive line and that tough Harbaugh type team, that physical team. But again, when they go to the playoffs, and I think they will, it would be a really shock if they didn't go to the playoffs. How will they match up with a physical, battle-tested SEC team who has played teams like Ohio State game in and game out, while Michigan hasn't been tested? And that's what hurts Michigan, Ohio State every single year, is that they, in my opinion, are just as good. I know that's hearsay, but they're just as good as SEC teams. But unfortunately, you know, the iron sharpens iron. They just don't get enough iron, unfortunately, in the Big Ten to get them battle tested. And simply one game against the opponent, against the other one, is not good enough.
I have another question. Okay, about Caleb Williams specifically. The only game I watched him play last year was against Notre Dame. I literally had no idea. We popped the game on, my wife and I, and the first time he touched the ball, I was like, who is this guy? He's a man, and the rest of everyone else out there are boys. Is that someone who is going to attract your betting money? I'm not necessarily on him winning the Heisman, but is he the type of player like Johnny Manziel who you can saddle up and win some bets just based on him alone?
I think he's really, really good. Johnny Manziel, you have to remember, he had first-round draft picks at wide receiver.
Mike Evans, right?
Oh, yeah. And he had an offensive line, and that's something USC doesn't have. You saw them pushed. If you watch the game at all against San Jose State, which I did, is that they still don't have the dudes up front and on either side of the ball. And that defense, you know, and maybe the Pac-12 is weak, and maybe they get through it and it's okay. But I think they'd be an early exit in the playoffs because of that. But they very well could. And another interesting fact is that since they're leaving this year, that they could, if they have one or fewer losses going through the Pac-12, and that all depends on them, and that all hedges on them getting to the playoffs. How about they just say screw the Pac-12 and not play in the Pac-12 championship game?
That's something they do.
And do an Irish goodbye from the Pac-12 and just walk out.
I'm a huge fan of the Ducks, just Oregon, and it really stems from all the uniform changes they did when I was younger, watching they were the first ones to be sort of dramatic about their uniform changes. So It's a nonsensical thing, but once a year, I try to bet a Ducks game. Now, I don't necessarily need to bet the Ducks to win. I just need them to bet to cover, but I have to bet the Ducks in some way, shape, or form. Do I have an opportunity against Portland State this weekend?
Will that game be on the board? It should be an alternate line. Yeah, it probably will be an alternate line late, and I haven't seen that line of what it is. Certainly could be. It depends, but if the line's 55, I doubt Vegas is going to give money away. So I'm sure they're going to make that line just as disgusting as they can so that you're looking at it and you're like, absolutely not. So you talked about earlier, you're emotional. When you see a line, you just have to do that and bet on it. And Vegas is clearly on the other side. And you're like, I know I'm wrong, but I'm doing it anyway. And so it's really like investing in stocks. When you're investing in stocks and you're like, hey, we all want a better price on stocks. But typically that's when the entire market goes down, when you've got you've got to hold your nose and you're like, okay, buy. And you're like, man, that just hurts to buy right here. And so it's the same thing with, I always draw lots of parallels between sports betting and stock investing, because to me, it's hold your nose at the time when when you just can't do it and you're just like, it feels better to go the other way. You have to go with a way that hurts you, and you typically will win. Now, you will take a year off your life by doing that, but at the end of the day, you're on the right side by doing something that's against the public.
So is there a such thing in sports betting? It's kind of, and we have this, Jimmy will vouch for this. We have this in active investing and long-term investing as well, where it's paralysis by analysis. I mean, I have friends of mine that they look at this thing and they go, well, the line was here, but now it moved to here. So that means Vegas is here and the hot money's here and the smart money's here. And they have so many inputs that I feel like you almost lose the sense of it. And this is the kind of thing that, we've spent a lot of our career trying to convince people to like, hey, if it's too complex, it's likely you don't have the answer and you kind of got to stay away from it. Is it similar in betting? Do people tend to put too much into it as opposed to just stepping back when they have too much information?
I totally agree. I mean, very few people where more information's better. Sometimes it's information overload. To your point, it's paralysis by analysis. And I think that certainly comes into a play here. And I think that, it's going to be, people are going to probably suffer from that a lot this year during this year's college football season, because there's so much parity across the league. There's really no clear NVIDIA in the league. There's not one dominant player that you're like, okay, this person is profiting from artificial intelligence because they own all the chips and they're just not 1 or 2 times faster than their next competitor. They're 45,000 times faster than the next available chip. There's nobody that dominant this year. So the paralysis by analysis is a real thing, and it's going to happen this year. And if you don't know it, you should step away.
So last time we had you on the show, one of the things that I think is really interesting and amazing is how the Irish traded a premium because of their ravenous fan base. How you said also some of the Big Ten teams, if not all the Big Ten teams, because they're just the magnitude of their alumni base, occasionally traded a premium what they should have. Where else are there anomalies? And by the way, do you, generally speaking, try to take the other side against Notre Dame just because of that?
Oh, absolutely. But you have to.
Is it a point? Is it a 1.5? What do you think it is?
I would probably say it can be either from 1, I would say even to 3 points that you get as a premium against Notre Dame, because by betting against them, because again, it is such a public team. I mean, just like in the NFL, whether it's Pittsburgh, whether it's Dallas and Green Bay, those are massive public teams that you're getting points for. So the old way of thinking is that every team gets 3 points just because they're a home team. There are teams that have more of a differential that just because they're home field. And Notre Dame is one of those people, one of those teams. So 100%, that's real. It happens. And long term, you can be successful betting against those public teams.
So along those lines, we have a mutual friend, right? And he's a Bills fan.
Yeah.
And so I always want to, actually, I've got one of my betting sites up here. You might know it off the top of your head. I don't, but I'm going to look for it as you answer. Probability of a Buffalo Bills AFC Championship this year, higher or lower than last year?
On the site or in my perception?
In your perception, I'll find the bet. I'm
In
not
my
looking it up
perception,
right now.
I think it's lower. And I think a lot of people are taking the over in the Bills team win total this year. I don't see it.
Plus 450 is what I'm seeing it here.
Yeah, I see that the Bills, I don't believe in Sean McDermott as a coach. The defensive head coaches, they either evolve like Nick Saban has done, or they perish. And they're slowly perishing from the landscape. As you can see from the NFC and AFC championship games, in the past 5 years, there, of course, have been 20 teams, 2 in each conference play over the past 5 years. And so out of those, only 3 defensive head coaches have made the championship game. And only one of those went to the Super Bowl. And that was the 2018 New England Patriots. And when they went, they lost to the offensive coach, Doug Peterson, Philadelphia-led Eagles. So again, the days of the defensive head coaches are fading. And Sean McDermott, again, has not got the offense right. The offense left town when Brian Daboll left.
He's calling the plays on the defense.
Leslie Frazier somehow just walked away, and I still don't understand that.
I don't know what happened there.
So he's walking away, and so now he's calling the defense. Yeah, so for me, I mean, I love the Dalton Kincaid from Utah, their first-round tight end pick. I think he's fantastic. I think it's a big loss for Utah this year. I think it's a great pick for Buffalo, but again, they just haven't got the offense right. Be interested to see.
So you mentioned the Cowboys, the Steelers, these big public teams that oftentimes trade at a premium because the betting money is behind them. Last time we talked, Bengals and Browns were the opposite and traded at a discount. Has that vanished now with Joe Burrow?
No, the Bengals are still got great odds, and for a Super Bowl pick, they are one of my picks that I was going to give you guys today. Is that I still love Cincinnati. I still love Lou Anarumo, their defensive coordinator. I was amazed that not a team swiped him up there this year. So, I mean, it's fantastic that he stayed. Really interesting thing I think that you guys would really enjoy hearing is that Cincinnati has owned Kansas City, except for last year's AFC game, of course.
Like 4-1 or 5-1 or something.
3-1. What Lou Anarumo has figured out is that Patrick Mahomes, if he throws the ball releases it quick and releases it under 2.75 seconds, Kansas City is 33-1. If you can make Patrick Mahomes hold it to over 2.75 seconds, he is 12-10. If you make him hold it to 3 seconds, he is 2-5.
So are you saying you give him time?
What?
Oh, I'm saying if you make him scramble, he is great when he releases it quick. It's counterintuitive. It's not something you would think that if you gave Patrick Mahomes more time, he'd be more dangerous. It's the opposite.
But you're not saying to not put a heavy rush on him. You're saying to flush him out of the pocket.
I'm saying absolutely put a rush on him, throw that.
Okay.
But again, the quick releases, and that goes to show you what Andy Reid's offense has done, because it's like Andy Reid sets him up for success with quick passes that are playing to his strengths, and that's Andy Reid's play calling. Not to say that Patrick Mahomes isn't great, but when you give him more time, it's more mistakes.
I'll tell you, watching that QB show on, I think it was Netflix that had it on.
Yeah.
I know exactly who's going to get after me once this show goes live. And I love him as a person, but man, that made me dislike Patrick Mahomes as a human being. I was just like, I can't even be around this kid.
Why? Is he just cocky or something?
No, he's not even cocky. He's really not. He does this strange thing. And again, I shouldn't even go into this, but they've got talk about a rabid fan base. Like, I've rooted for him, a lot of these, but I wish he wouldn't have done that show. And it has nothing to do with his wife annoys people. She doesn't annoy me at all. He does this thing where he does an amazing play. He's an unbelievable athlete. And I think you can call him, he's in the top 3 quarterbacks in my mind that ever played at this point. So unless he gets hurt and gets a career-ending injury, he's going to be top 1 or 2 in history. He's that good. But he makes a good play, and then he runs over to one of his teammates, and he's like, "See what I just did? They were disrespecting me on the last play, so I did that." And it was like, let him come and tell you that.
Maybe he's just a kid, though.
It's probably generational. It really is. It's probably just generational. I shouldn't even say this because it's like Aaron Rodgers. I can now finally like Aaron Rodgers. And I'm watching Hard Knocks, and I love him. Like, he's such a character, and he's so cool with the young players, and he breaks balls with the coaches. He went over to some coach and kicked him in the nuts, and he just seems like a fun guy.
Yeah, it's the fun Rodgers. It's no longer the salty Rodgers that was at Green Bay.
We don't have to hate him as Bears fans anymore, which is kind of nice.
I still kind of transformation.
I still kind of hate him, but.
Do you think the Jets are going to be good, by the way? As long as you brought up the Jets, let's talk about them.
I do.
What do we think? You do? What about you, Phil?
I certainly think they have a chance. I mean, look, they did great last year, even with Zach Wilson. So to say that they wouldn't do that with Aaron Rodgers, I mean, you'd think that they would. I mean, their defense is outstanding. They've got some great weapons. The problem with the Jets, again, is the offensive tackle position. And Aaron Rodgers is less mobile. It's like, if you go back and look, like he and Dak Prescott now, they used to be, these mobile quarterbacks, and now they are more pocket passers. Aaron Rodgers does not like to get hit. And that's the rumor out of training camp, is that he's taken a lot of sacks, and that, he gets really, let's see how the nice, cool Aaron Rodgers gets when he starts getting lit up in games because he's getting sacked. Does he revert back to salty Aaron Rodgers? And I think he will. And does that erode the team chemistry? So I think it's a super interesting story because, will this be the year the Jets fans finally are like, we get to go to the playoffs with everybody else. We get to play with the grownups, and we get to go hang out. Or will this be the year that it implodes? It's a huge veer for Robert Saleh. If this doesn't work this year, Robert Saleh's probably gone.
What? So we're both all acting like the Jets picked up Aaron Rodgers. The Jets picked up an old guy. I mean, we've all been watching these games a long, long time, and we've seen one guy ever be productive. And I think that's in our head, and I think we have this confirmation bias. Like, what's he going to be at the end of the season? 38 years old?
Right.
And we're all like, oh, that's fine. No, I guess we've seen two. Drew Brees played pretty high level at an old age, too.
Yeah.
Do we have confirmation bias because of those two? Could they be getting just a decrepit old man?
I think it's certainly possible. I certainly don't have the same faith in Aaron Rodgers. I look at him dramatically different as I did even 3 years ago. That's what happens is that, even if you talk to Dan Marino today and got him to go throw a ball, he can go throw a ball. It's the legs that give out. And that's what keeps you from getting the zip on the ball and getting it downfield. And I think you'll see that continuously. We saw it last year. His last pass as a Green Bay Packer was an interception against Detroit in the final game, and a bad interception. So I don't see him, I know we want to have a made for Disney movie, but I don't see him pushing the sun back up in the sky again.
I don't want to have that, by the way, just to be clear.
It is funny, though, because the Jets have a fairly intriguing wide receiver group, right? But it was funny, if you're watching Hard Knocks at all, and not everybody has Max, and I unfortunately subscribe to too many of these services, but the salty Rodgers started to come out by episode 3. Yeah, and it was funny. He's whipping the ball, and he's like, "Come on, man! Turn your head when I throw it. Run the right route." Yeah. Even in one of the preseason games he didn't play in, he's really cool with Jones, and Mac Jones looks even better. And granted, it's preseason, but he looks better than he did last year under this tutelage. And you see Rodgers tutoring, and Rodgers is acutely aware that the cameras are on him, I'm sure.
Okay.
But they have this intriguing wide receiver group. But even when Mac threw a touchdown, Rodgers started going, "Hey, guy ran the wrong route. He got the ball. I'm not giving him the ball if he runs the wrong route." And you can see him already getting that way, The kid got open, but he ran the wrong route. And Jones hit him, and Rodgers was like, no, not in my house.
Oh, 100%. Rodgers, he's really tough on young wide receivers. And that's why he brings in his veteran wide receivers. So you've got an old guy who doesn't run anymore, who doesn't have the arm that he used to, and he's bringing in older veteran wide receivers that don't run like they used to. So, fortunately, he's got Garrett Wilson, who's outstanding, and it gives him, he's got a great weapon in him, but how long until he gets mad at him? Will he get mad? And when he does that, people just disappear. You could be wide open and he won't throw it to you.
I think without the existence of Justin Jefferson, people would be talking a lot more about Garrett Wilson than they are. But all you can talk about now is JJ. And by the way, another thing about that quarterback show, it really makes you want Kirk Cousins to win a Super Bowl. What a sweetheart of a guy.
How amazing. God. How can someone completely shift their image? Like I said, I don't know that too many quarterbacks would benefit from doing that Netflix series because, again, it puts a lot of attention on them. But Kirk Cousins, I mean, how amazing. How can you not like the guy after watching that show?
I mean, the guy is just like, hey, we lost the game. I'm just going to get in my expedition and go to my very modest house and be with my wife and kids and say a prayer. And it's like, oh, my God, who are you?
I know.
It's just a joy to watch. Jimmy, if you don't mind, I want to ask two sort of prop-ish bet questions.
Sure.
And then it is Uncle Phil's lock. So, I'll, ask Jimmy if he's got any more questions and then get your lock.
No, I want to know the locks. You go.
Yeah. Okay. So I just want to ask, I know two people specifically that have said their sleeper Super Bowl pick is the Browns. That's the first question. And the second question
Cleveland Browns.
The Cleveland Browns with Deshaun. My neck muscles are sore, Watson. And then I want to go back to Cincinnati question because I love Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. But Jimmy kind of phrased the question like, even with Burrows, maybe he's hurt, maybe he's not. You're saying even if Burrows is hurt, they're still that good?
Absolutely. Look, they're not going to be. Look, if Burrow's injury, his calf injury, plays out throughout the season, is worse than we think, then that's going to be a bad bet. I believe that because of 17-game schedule, it's a long season, and even if they give him 2 or 3 games off just to make sure that's fully healed and recovered, I put my money on Joe Burrow, and he's already shown that he plays through injuries and pain, and they're going to have to sit him down. So he's a pro's pro. And like I said last year, barring something catastrophic, he's a future Hall of Famer.
I love that guy.
Yeah.
What about sleeper Cleveland? Any interest?
Sleeper Cleveland. Thank you. Cleveland has gone all in this year. They've reworked Deshaun Watson's contract so that instead of a $55 million cap hit this year, it's only $19 million. And next year, the next 3 years, it's $65 million. So it's 1 year or bust for them because next year it's a total dismantle. So they've got the best offensive line, arguably, in the entire NFL. So you've got a great defense. I think they're top 5 as far as cap spending and wide receivers. You've got weapons. Same, I think, number 6 in running back. They are a team. And if Deshaun Watson can shake off the rust from last year and get back to where they are, they absolutely should be. And I can understand. And there are a lot of sharps that are betting on Cleveland. Cleveland is a very sharpish pick this year because their roster is set. But again, Cleveland's dysfunction as an organization usually permeates down and doesn't win. But looking back, just think of a few years ago. I know it's easy to forget. They won 11 games under Baker Mayfield, and they can do it again. So I wouldn't say that's a terrible bet.
Excuse my ignorance here. Is their line, the defensive line, still anchored by, is it Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney? Are they the two that, okay.
Davian's sometimes gone, but Myles Garrett's there.
Where's Jadeveon Clowney now?
Free agent still.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, nobody signed him.
Every once in a while I play that play against Michigan when he swallowed that guy up and grabbed the ball like he was a big bear.
It was unbelievable. That was.
I think
I've played it 100 times.
It's a top 5 play.
In my mind, was one of the least likely high NFL draft picks to turn out to be just kind of an average journeyman when it's all gone.
Yeah, that was the knock on him. That was the knock on him in college, is that he doesn't give effort all the time, and you're just like, man, you have the all-world talent. If you just played like that, if you just had the heart to go with that, then you'd be unstoppable. But that's right, it's frustrating. It's often confusing when we don't see individuals or teams live up to what they should be.
So that organizational dysfunction is why I don't believe any of the Lions hype, by the way. Justin Fields is plus 2,500 for the offensive player of the year for this year.
If his abilities of passing the ball can match his running ability, that's a great bet.
Do you guys remember him as a passer at Ohio State? Because I do. I don't remember him as a runner.
I think it was more of a passer. I remember him, right.
It's really interesting when you play in the Big Ten and play for Ohio State or play for Michigan. I mean, look at C.J. Stroud. He had a better wide receiving core at Ohio State than he does now at Houston. It's really interesting. So life changes, and sometimes you expect life to get better as you age, and sometimes as a quarterback, you don't. You have these amazing college teams, and then NFL, of course, you get drafted high by an organization typically not doing as well, and you go to Houston Texans with a defensive head coach and not a very good wide receiver staff, and you're like, huh. And then reality comes at you hard.
By the way, does plus 2,500 mean 25 to 1, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
$100 bet gets 2,500. Well, when you look at those 5 games that he was really, really playing well in, that seems like he's worth it to me. I may put some money on that.
Not quite a cabinet option, Jimmy, but it's almost a cabinet option.
Oh, yeah, I know, yeah. Why don't we just still call it 25 to 1 instead of calling it plus 2,500 now? When did the cool guys change the lingo?
I don't know.
One of the sites I use, the minimum bet, actually it helps me because one of the sites I use when I do bet, which isn't that often, I'm talking like I bet a lot, I don't. It's $100 minimum bet.
Oh, so it's got to be.
It's really easy, but it's listed that way on almost every site. Am I wrong, Phil?
It is. No, you're 100% right. I'm assuming those are legal bets, right?
Of course.
Okay.
I've never done anything.
You know us.
Yeah.
No, you guys are between the lines.
Locks. Can we do locks, Jimmy?
Yes.
What are your locks? Prop bets, college weekend, whatever you want.
Yeah, let's go for you guys. Unfortunately, your listeners won't hear this in time, but let's go Florida plus 6.5 at Utah.
When's that game?
Thursday night.
Okay, they won't hear it.
Utah's without Cam Rising because he's recovering from an injury, and they haven't settled in on a quarterback. And when you're going between two, you don't have one. And they're also without his big target, Dalton Kincaid. Now we talked about with the Bills. So as much as I don't like Billy Napier as a coach, I think Florida's got enough talent to keep it within 6.5. On Saturday, we talked about Toledo plus 10 versus Illinois. I didn't say to win. I just said to keep it.
I just can't let it. Just say what you got to say and leave me alone.
Then 10. Enjoy the game. It's the emotional hedge, Jimmy.
Hey, Jimmy, that's kind of an ideal bet. Like every single year the Bears play Green Bay, I bet Green Bay to win, so I'm happy either way.
And give me Auburn minus 35.5 at home on the Plains opening weekend against UMass.
That's one of those games.
Yeah. Again, coming down to the South in the heat that they'll experience in Auburn, Alabama, I think will be tough for them. And Auburn, it'll be kicking off a new era for them. So I expect it to be an emotional game for Auburn, kicking off the Hugh Freeze era, and a tough night for UMass. So those are my two. I will have more on my website. If you want some more action at Uncle Phil's Locks, probably throw some last-minute games up on Twitter as well. Those are them as far as prop bets. Favorites, AFC, Cincinnati. NFC comes down to rosters because, again, no clear dominant quarterback, amazingly, in the entire NFC. So it comes down to rosters. And look for San Francisco to take that. I look for Philadelphia to take a step back without Steichen being there. Now he's gone to Indianapolis. You're almost like, is that going to be the Dayball effect? Or Dayball left, went to Giants. Josh Allen has regressed. Will Jalen Hurts regress? I think he could. And also Gannon going to the Cardinals from the defensive coordinator position of the Eagles, and now the head coach there. So a lot of turmoil there. So I would say those are my two favorites. My sleepers are both in the NFC because, again, if you can just get to the playoffs and you somehow navigate your way through luck or through injuries, you get to the Super Bowl, you have a haymaker's chance of getting through and actually winning.
You're not going to say the Detroit Lions, are you?
No, but but I almost did for you guys. But I did, but I wouldn't. I knew that would be too little salty for that. But what I do think is Seattle has a great opportunity. They've gotten Geno Smith last year tied for first with Patrick Mahomes as the only two quarterbacks that threw multiple TDs last year, and they did it in 12 games. So look, Geno Smith, who turns 33 in October, will he stay Geno Smith or will he revert? But again, he seems to have flourished under Pete Carroll. The Seattle has got a lot of young guys that are a bunch of dudes. And again, that's what works for Pete Carroll, because Pete Carroll, he really works well. He's a rah-rah guy and plays well with the younger kids. But when the veterans have been there too long, the rah-rah speech kind of falls flat. But this team is young, and it goes back to kind of Legion of Boom when they were really solidified. So again, he's a defensive head coach, and because it goes against what I was saying earlier, but he's a defensive head coach that's won a Super Bowl, and look for Pete Carroll to be formidable and have a puncher's chance of doing it again. The other team that I think that you've got an opportunity with are the New York Giants. The New York Giants added a premier left tackle, one of the best in the business. And again, those guys do not grow on trees. I mean, those guys are very rare, as everybody can find out. And adding Waller at tight end, they are really formidable. Got Saquon Barkley back. I think that the Giants, again, under Daboll, have a puncher's chance, and that's assuming that Philadelphia takes a step back. The McCarthy-led Cowboys, I just don't have any faith in McCarthy at all. Those are my two sleepers. Those are my two favorites. That's what I think.
Brock Purdy, you're the second person whose football opinion I really respect that picks San Francisco.
Is he the starter or is it Trey Lance?
Brock Purdy's the starter at San Francisco, and I don't know, man. He just reminds me of who was the guard on the New York Knicks? Jeremy Lim or Ling or that's who Purdy reminds me of. Like, nobody can understand why he's good, and then all of a sudden he's not good anymore.
Yeah, it's really interesting. His secret sauce is Shanahan.
You're a big coach guy. Like,
yeah,
big on that.
100%. Yeah. If you look back, I mean, he took fourth string quarterback in Nick Mullins just a few years ago and did it one year when he had like 3 injuries in front of him. So he can work magic, and it's really a system with Shanahan. He's missing the rings because right now I think everybody thinks that, hey, it's Belichick and then it's Andy Reid and then maybe Shanahan after that as far as the coaching tree. But if Shanahan wins a couple more titles, I think people will look back and go, hey, Shanahan is a lot better than a lot of people think he is. And he's a phenomenal coach.
Oh, then I do have one more question now that you said Shanahan a few times. Does Russell Wilson have any sort of resurgence? Do you think he was frustrated about being awful last year and put the work in?
Russell Wilson, last year I talked to you guys, he was slower. He was thicker than he was. I don't know what happened, but he lifted too many weights and he was just thick and he was wearing, and every time you saw a video of him, he had his, it was just practice video. He had his shirt so tight so you could see his guns. And any quarterback that you've seen that is a great passer, they're not muscled up. It's not a gun show. They have to be fluid and they have to have that range. You can't be muscled up. So, and Russell Wilson has to have mobility to his game because he's not strictly a drop back passer. He's got to be more mobile. And so the first thing Sean Payton did, not shockingly to me, is Russell Wilson's already 15 pounds down less than he was last year.
I heard that.
We took him down. Russell Wilson also had his entire entourage out there under Nathaniel Hackett last year. There's no entourage. Russell Wilson's people are banned from the building during practice, and it is simply he blends into just the team. And so Sean Payton has got him there. And just remember, Sean Payton has a winning record with Taysom Hill, with Teddy Bridgewater, and Jameis Winston. And so to think that he can't do that same thing with Russell Wilson is, again, not putting enough faith in Sean Payton. Russell Wilson, after 1 year, is not washed. There's no historical precedent for a quarterback going from a Super Bowl caliber to just wash the next year. So look for that to turn around and Denver Broncos to be a semi-formidable team, even though they've suffered some devastating losses at wide receiver.
All right, let's
Jimmy,
wrap it.
since you brought up Russell Wilson, he is plus 1,200 or 12-1 to be the NFL Comeback Player of the Year. So
okay, good.
I
like that.
Damar Hamlin. I mean, Damar Hamlin is plus 400, so 4-1.
Oh Jesus!
Okay.
You have a heart attack on the field, and then you play. You win the award.
Be tough to bet against Damar Hamlin.
Yeah, agreed. Phil, thank you so much. Jimmy, you good?
Yeah, I'm good.
We are good.
Thanks, Phil. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for being there. Uncle Phil's Locks, everybody.